Alaska does not reveal itself as a destination in the way most places do. It opens instead like a threshold, a quiet but undeniable boundary at the far edge of the known world. To arrive here is not simply to reach a location, but to cross into something that feels less certain, less defined. It is as if the very idea of a map begins to hesitate, its lines growing faint, its confidence quietly dissolving. What lies ahead is not easily contained or explained. The land rises without warning. Mountains do not gently introduce themselves, they stand abruptly, their presence absolute and unyielding. Their slopes are sharp, their faces carved by forces that seem indifferent to time or human understanding. There is no softness in their outline, no invitation to approach, only a silent assertion of scale and permanence. Between them, on vast fields of ice stretch across the valleys, pale and unmoving, as though time itself has settled into these spaces and chosen to remain. The ice does not suggest stillness as peace, but as something heavier, something that endures beyond motion, beyond change. And then there are the seas. Cold and distant, they seem almost aware, holding themselves apart with a kind of quiet vigilance. They do not rush to meet the land, nor do they welcome what comes near. Instead, they linger at the edges, watchful and restrained, as if measuring everything that approaches. There is a tension in their stillness, a sense that beneath the surface lies a force that does not need to reveal itself to be understood. What defines Alaska most immediately is not its beauty, though it is undeniably present, nor is it the silence, though that too can feel overwhelming. It is the sheer magnitude of everything, the scale that presses in from all sides, reshaping perception before a single step is even taken. Here, size is not just something you observe, it is something you feel. It narrows certainty, makes the familiar seem small, and turns direction into something fragile. Distance in this place is not passive. It does not simply exist between 2 points, it acts. It shifts, expands, and absorbs. Trails that seem clear can vanish without warning, swallowed by terrain that refuses to be fixed in memory. Landmarks lose their meaning as perspectives change, and what once felt recognizable can dissolve into something entirely unfamiliar. The environment does not hold on to what passes through it. It takes it in, reshapes it, and moves on. In Alaska, orientation is never permanent. What you see in one moment may not remain in the next. Light changes, weather shifts, and the land itself seems to rearrange its presence. Memory struggles to keep up, trying to anchor itself to details that are already slipping away. There is a constant sense that nothing is entirely stable, not even your understanding of where you stand. Even stillness here carries an undercurrent of uncertainty. It is not the calm of something settled, but the pause of something vast and unresolved. The air may be quiet, the land unmoving, yet there is a feeling that everything exists on the edge of change. In this place, stillness does not comfort, it unsettles. It reminds you that beneath the surface of what appears unchanged, there is always motion waiting, always something shifting just beyond perception. Nothing in Alaska ever truly stays the same for long. What appears solid and permanent is often only a temporary state in a much larger cycle. Water freezes into vast sheets of ice, locking landscapes into silence, only to loosen again under shifting temperatures and return to motion. What was once rigid becomes fluid. What felt still begins to move. The ground beneath your feet, which seems dependable at first glance, can soften into unstable mud, reshaped by thaw and time. Even the seas, calm and reflective one moment, can rise into sudden violence, driven by forces that rarely announce themselves in advance. In this place, the line between land and water is never entirely clear. Coastlines shift, ice melts into ocean, and ocean pushes back against the land. It feels as though both are part of a single, arcing living system, constantly adjusting, constantly redefining its own boundaries. Nothing stands completely apart. Everything is connected through change. Here, land is not simply something you walk on or observe, it is an ongoing process. It is transformation made visible. Every surface is engaged in a quiet negotiation with temperature, pressure, and time. Mountains erode, glaciers advance and retreat, rivers carve new paths without hesitation. The environment does not settle into one identity. It moves through many again and again in an endless cycle. Because of this, Alaska does not rely on spectacle to feel powerful. It does not need to exaggerate itself or demand attention. Its sheer scale already creates a sense of tension, a quiet awareness that everything is in motion, even when it appears still. Its constant transformation tells its own story, one that unfolds slowly but relentlessly. Everything that exists within this environment must find a way to align with that rhythm. Rivers shift their courses, animals adapt their behaviors to survive the extremes. Even human presence, no matter how determined, must learn to adjust or risk being overwhelmed. There is no standing outside of this system, only participating in it. In Alaska, change is not something that happens occasionally or unexpectedly. It is not an interruption to normal life. It is the foundation of everything. It is the quiet rule that shapes every moment, every landscape, every living thing. Change here is not an event. It is the baseline. Along the coast and deep within mountain valleys, glaciers dominate the landscape in a way that feels almost timeless. From a distance, they appear permanent, vast, unbroken sheets of white laid across the earth like something far too heavy, too ancient, to ever truly change. They resemble stone more than water, as if they belong to the solid bones of the planet rather than its shifting surface. Frozen, silent, unmoving, but that stillness is an illusion. Glaciers move. Not with urgency, not with the visible force of rivers or storms, but with a slow, relentless determination that is easy to overlook. Under their own immense weight, they begin to advance, inch by inch, year after year. Snowfall accumulates, compressing into dense layers of ice, transforming something soft and temporary into something powerful and enduring. What begins as delicate flakes becomes a mass capable of reshaping the land itself. To the human eye, this motion is almost impossible to detect in real time. A glacier appears unchanged from one moment to the next, but the earth registers every shift. Valleys grow deeper, rock faces are worn down, entire landscapes are gradually carved and redefined, not by speed or violence, but by pressure and persistence alone. A glacier does not need to rush to leave its mark. It uses time as its greatest force. As it moves forward, it grinds against the earth beneath it, crushing rock into fine sediment and dragging debris along its path. It carves channels through mountains, reshaping terrain that once seemed immovable. What it leaves behind is not chaotic or random. It is structured, patterns etched into the land, formed not by intention, but by the steady application of force over centuries. This is a kind of geography written in ice, a record of motion that continues long after the glacier itself retreats. From above, glaciers appear smooth and serene, quiet, almost peaceful, like frozen rivers pause in time. But beneath that surface lies constant tension. Deep within the ice, pressure builds and shifts. Cracks form silently, and crevasses can open without warning. Dark, hidden fractures that cut deep into the glacier's core. Meltwater seeps through, carving tunnels and channels within the frozen mass, accelerating movement from the inside. The glacier is never truly still. It is always adjusting, responding to gravity, to temperature, to the subtle balance of forces acting upon it. In many ways, a glacier behaves like a river, but it is a river governed by a different sense of time, one that flows not in seconds or days, but in decades and centuries. A river that does not rush, a river that endures, a river that shapes the world slowly, patiently, and with unstoppable force. At the coast, the glacier reveals its most violent expression. This is where stillness gives way to motion, where something that appears eternal begins to show its fragile, shifting nature. From a distance, the ice seems unmoving, like a frozen monument carved outside of time. But here, at the edge, that illusion quietly unravels. Without warning, a deep crack echoes through the silence. It starts as a distant tremor, almost subtle, then grows into something unmistakable. A massive wall of ice fractures. The surface splinters along hidden lines of stress that have been building for years, sometimes centuries. In an instant, the illusion of permanence collapses. A section the size of buildings breaks free. For a brief moment, it hangs, suspended between past and present before gravity takes hold. Then it falls. The impact is explosive. The sound is not just loud, it is overwhelming, physical. It rolls through the air like thunder, compressed into a single, violent heartbeat. It shakes the water, the sky, and everything in between. The sea erupts in response, waves surge outward in all directions, lifting and colliding, reshaping the surface in seconds. Ice and spray are thrown high into the air, scattering light into fragments. Mist hangs above the water like breath in cold air. The shock travels far beyond the point of impact, rippling across the ocean in widening circles. This is calving, a process as natural as it is dramatic, a moment where the glacier releases what it can no longer hold. But what falls is more than ice. Each collapse feels like time being set free. Layer upon layer of compressed snowfall, winters stacked upon winters. Storms buried beneath silence are suddenly exposed and then lost. What once fell as soft flakes from the sky has been transformed over decades and centuries into something dense, ancient, and enduring. And now, in a matter of seconds, it breaks away and disappears into salt water. It is history, stored in frozen form, severed from the land that carried it for so long. These towering blocks drift briefly, turning slowly in the water before beginning their quiet journey toward dissolution. Edges soften, surfaces crack and melt. What was once solid and immovable becomes fluid, temporary, returning to the cycle it came from. These are not just fragments of ice, they are fragments of memory, pieces of a frozen past released into a world that is constantly changing. Glaciers are more than vast structures of ice stretching across remote landscapes. They are keepers of time, silent, immense archives that have been recording the Earth's history long before human memory began. Within their frozen layers lie traces of ancient climates, the echoes of colder eras, the remnants of distant storms, fine grains of volcanic ash, and even tiny pockets of air from atmospheres that no longer exist in quite the same form. Each layer tells a story. Each one is a moment, captured, compressed, and sealed by the steady passage of time. Over centuries, even millennia, these layers accumulate, forming something far greater than ice. They become a living record, a memory bank written in snow and hardened into permanence. In their stillness, glaciers preserve what would otherwise be lost, allowing the past to endure far beyond its own time. But this archive, once stable and enduring, is no longer secure. As global temperatures rise, warmer seasons begin to stretch longer than before. The natural cycles that once maintained balance are shifting. Ice that held firm for centuries now softens at the edges. Structures that seemed immovable begin to weaken. At the boundaries, where glaciers meet the ocean, the changes are even more dramatic. These fragile edges are increasingly exposed, breaking apart, retreating, and dissolving into the sea. And as glaciers recede, something more than ice is lost. They do not simply shed mass, they lose memory. The layers that once held precise records of Earth's past begin to vanish. Information that took thousands of years to form can disappear in a fraction of that time. What was once preserved with such precision is now being erased, detail by detail, layer by layer. This transformation changes how we see glaciers. They are no longer just distant, frozen landscapes of quiet beauty. They become something more complex, more urgent. They are witnesses, silent observers of the planet's long history. But at the same time, they are casualties of the very changes they record. Their existence is defined by motion. Glaciers are never truly still. They flow, shift, and reshape the land beneath them with slow, persistent force. That movement is what gives them their power, the ability to carve valleys, to shape mountains, to leave lasting marks on the earth itself. Yet that same motion is also what makes them vulnerable, because when the balance shifts, when the pace of change accelerates, the very force that once sustained them begins to work against them. And in that quiet, steady retreat, something irreplaceable is slipping away. Not just ice, but the story it carried. Glaciers are Alaska in its most elemental, unfiltered form, a vast and restless system that never truly stands still, never settles into permanence. Everything here exists in a constant state of transition, governed by forces that are both patient and unstoppable. Water falls from the sky as snow, soft and weightless at first. Over time, that snow compresses, layer upon layer, until it hardens into dense ancient ice. That ice does not remain fixed. It begins to move slowly, almost imperceptibly, yet with a force capable of reshaping entire landscapes. This movement is not gentle. It grinds against rock, carving valleys, dragging debris, rewriting the surface of the land itself, and eventually, that same ice fractures. It collapses, breaking apart in thunderous releases, and sending massive sections crashing into the sea or crumbling into rivers below. But this is not an end. Collapse is not destruction, it is continuation, because from that moment, the cycle begins again. Nothing here holds its form long enough to be called permanent. What appears stable is only temporary, a brief pause in a much longer transformation. Even the largest glaciers, immense and seemingly indestructible, are bound to this rhythm. They are not fixed structures frozen in time, but participants in an ongoing process that guarantees change. Alaska does not preserve things in the way we might expect. It does not protect them from time. Instead, it transforms them. It takes what exists and reshapes it again and again through cycles that are both predictable and unforgiving. These rivers of ice are not monuments to endurance. They are living processes under pressure, constantly carving, shifting, breaking apart, and moving forward. And within them, they carry something intangible, the memory of climate, of seasons long past, of conditions that no longer exist. Yet even that memory is not safe. As the ice moves, melts, and fractures, those records begin to fade, dissolving back into the world they once documented. In Alaska, nothing is truly kept. Everything is in motion. Everything is becoming something else. Beneath Alaska's vast, frozen surface, a far more dynamic and restless world exists, one that contrasts sharply with the stillness seen above. Glaciers may dominate the landscape, stretching across mountains and valleys like slow-moving rivers of ice, but they conceal a powerful and ever-changing force below. What appears calm and silent is, in truth, only the outer layer of a region shaped by constant geological activity. Alaska lies along the Pacific Ring of Fire, one of the most volatile and active zones on Earth. This immense boundary encircles the Pacific Ocean, marking the edges of massive tectonic plates that are in continuous motion. Here, these plates do not simply drift. They collide, grind, and push against one another with unimaginable force. Deep beneath layers of rock, ice, and snow, heat builds, pressure accumulates. The Earth shifts in ways that are invisible to the eye, yet powerful enough to reshape entire landscapes. A chain of volcanoes stretches in a sweeping arc across the Aleutian Islands, extending for thousands of kilometers. From above, these islands may seem isolated and distant, scattered across the ocean like fragments of land lost to time. But in reality, they trace a critical boundary within the Earth's crust, a line where one tectonic plate is forced downward beneath another in a process known as subduction. It is here, along this hidden seam, that some of the most intense geological activity occurs. As one plate sinks deeper into the mantle, it begins to melt under extreme heat and pressure, generating magma that rises toward the surface. This molten rock fuels Alaska's volcanoes, auto-feeding eruptions that can reshape the land and send ash high into the atmosphere. At the same time, the immense stress between colliding plates releases energy in sudden, violent bursts, earthquakes that remind us of the forces constantly at work below. Despite the frozen silence of its surface, Alaska is anything but still. Beneath the ice, the ground remains in motion, shifting, building, and releasing energy in an endless cycle. It is a land defined not only by cold and isolation, but by the powerful tension that lies hidden beneath. A place where, even in apparent stillness, the earth is very much alive. Earthquakes are not random disruptions. They are part of a vast, unseen system constantly at work beneath the surface. In southwestern Alaska, some of the most powerful seismic events on Earth occur along a single tectonic boundary, the very same one that fuels its chain of volcanoes. These forces are not separate or isolated. They are deeply connected, different expressions of the same immense energy moving through the planet. Far below the surface, pressure does not simply appear overnight. It builds slowly, almost imperceptibly. Layers of rock press against one another. Tectonic plates grind, lock, and resist. Energy accumulates over years, decades, sometimes even centuries, stored silently within the Earth's crust. And then, eventually, the system releases it. When it does, the results can be sudden and overwhelming. The ground shifts, the landscape trembles. What seems stable just moments before reveals itself to be part of something far more dynamic and unpredictable. This creates one of Alaska's most striking contrasts. A place where two completely different worlds exist at once. Above the surface, there is silence. Vast stretches of ice and snow lie undisturbed. Mountains stand frozen in time, their peaks locked in stillness. The air is cold, the environment calm, almost untouched. It feels permanent, as if nothing could ever change. But below, it is a different story entirely. Beneath that quiet exterior, the earth is in constant motion. Heat rises from deep within. Rock bends under pressure. Fault lines strain, inching closer to release. Invisible forces are at work, reshaping the land in ways that cannot be seen, only felt when they finally break through. A frozen mountain, solid and unmoving to the eye, may actually sit atop a restless volcanic system. A landscape that appears sealed by winter's grip may, just beneath its surface, be shifting, adjusting, preparing for a sudden transformation. This hidden tension is what defines the region. It is a place where stillness and motion coexist, where calm and chaos are separated by only a few miles of rock. And that is what makes it so powerful. Because in Alaska, what you see is only half the story. Volcanoes reveal this hidden energy, but only in fleeting intervals. For long stretches of time, they remain silent, still, unassuming. From a distance, they appear no different from the surrounding land. Snow settles across their slopes in thick, unbroken layers. Ice grips their ridges, hard and unmoving. The wind passes over them without resistance, as if nothing beneath could ever stir again. They blend seamlessly into the vast, frozen quiet. But beneath that calm surface, the system never truly sleeps. Deep below, pressure continues to build slowly, invisibly, persistently. Heat moves through rock. Magma shifts, searching for space. The earth tightens under forces that cannot be seen, only felt when they finally reach their limit. And when that threshold is crossed, the illusion of stillness shatters. Ash surges into the sky, darkening the horizon. Steam bursts through cracks in the ground, rising in violent clouds. The earth trembles, not gently, but with a force that reminds everything above it of what lies below. Eruptions tear through the landscape, breaking apart the quiet that once seemed permanent. These moments do not last forever. They come in bursts, brief, powerful, undeniable, but they are never sluchania. They are inevitable. Even in the long stretches between eruptions, when nothing seems to happen, the land is far from at rest. It is constantly adjusting through shifting faults, bending surfaces, and subtle movements that ripple across the terrain. Changes too small to notice in the moment, yet powerful enough to reshape everything over time. Alaska exists in this constant state of negotiation, a balance that is never truly balanced. At any given moment, one force may rise above the others, quietly at first, then without warning. Ice, mud, fire, storm. After the raw contrasts of fire and ice, Alaska reveals something quieter, yet no less powerful: its fjords. At first glance, they might resemble coastlines, but that impression fades quickly. These are not gentle shores, shaped by tides and time. They are immense, deliberate incisions in the land, deep corridors carved into solid rock by the slow, relentless movement of ancient glaciers. For thousands of years, ice advanced and retreated, grinding against the earth with a force that reshaped entire mountains. And when the glaciers finally withdrew, they left behind these vast, hollowed passages, which the ocean would later fill. The result is something strikingly different from anything we usually call a coast. Fjords stretch long and narrow, like veins cut deep into the body of the land. On either side, cliffs rise sharply, often almost vertical, towering above the water with a quiet, immovable presence. There's a sense of enclosure here, as if the land itself is closing in, holding the sea in place. The scale can feel overwhelming, yet strangely intimate at the same time. And then there is the water. It is not the bright, open blue of the ocean. Instead, it is darker, heavier in appearance. Its depth is difficult to measure with the eye, and its surface often reflects the surrounding cliffs like a shadowed mirror. Beneath it, unseen forces are always at work. Cold currents slipping through narrow channels, fine sediments drifting down from glacial melt, and the lingering chill of ice that once dominated this entire region. These waters carry memory. Because fjords were never truly shaped by the sea, the ocean did not create them. It only arrived later, filling the spaces that ice had already defined. That history changes how they feel. There is a sense that the water is an occupant rather than an owner, moving through a structure it did not build. And that difference is subtle but undeniable. Standing before a fjord does not feel like standing at the edge of a coastline. It feels more enclosed, more deliberate, like stepping into a place where something immense once happened, and where its presence has never fully disappeared. There is a quiet tension in that. Because fjords do not simply invite you in, they hold you there, between stone and water, between past and present. Their silence is not empty, it is layered, shaped by time, pressure, and transformation. They are not just landscapes, they are marks left behind. Not soft edges where land meets sea, but deep impressions, reminders of a force strong enough to carve through mountains and patient enough to leave something lasting in its wake. Less like coasts, and more like something the earth remembers. Fjords are not static places frozen in time. They are living systems, constantly shaped and reshaped by the quiet but relentless force of the tides. With each passing hour, the ocean breathes into them, water surging inland with purpose, pressing deep into narrow corridors carved by ancient ice. Then, just as steadily, it withdraws, reversing its flow, pulling everything back toward the open sea. This motion is not chaotic. It is rhythmic, deliberate, almost like a pulse. Within these confined spaces, movement becomes amplified, channels narrow, guiding the water into tighter paths where its speed and force increase. Currents collide and twist, forming eddies that spin silently beneath the surface, unseen but powerful. These swirling pockets of water can appear and vanish within moments, reshaping the behavior of everything around them, from drifting ice to the smallest marine life. Along the edges, the shorelines themselves seem to shift in character. Light changes. Reflections fracture and reform. What appears calm and still at one moment can become restless and unpredictable the next. In just a matter of hours, the same fjord can transform completely, its mood altered, its textures redefined, its presence almost unfamiliar. There is something deeply organic about this transformation. The entire system behaves as if it were alive, responding to forces beyond immediate perception. It expands and contracts with a kind of quiet precision, guided by cycles older than memory. Nothing remains fixed for long. Every movement, every subtle shift contributes to an ongoing process of change. And this is where Alaska reveals one of its most striking qualities. It becomes cinematic without trying, without the need for embellishment or intervention. The scale, the motion, the interplay of water and land all come together naturally, creating scenes that feel both immense and intimate at the same time. It is as if the land itself is breathing. The fjords inhale, drawing the ocean inward, filling their depths with motion and energy. Then they exhale, releasing it back, resetting the stage for the next cycle. In that continuous exchange, there is a quiet power, one that doesn't demand attention but holds it effortlessly. Within this vast and unforgiving environment, life does not stand apart from its surroundings as something separate or self-sustaining. It does not exist in isolation. Instead, it becomes part of the system itself, woven into the rhythms of water, ice, and shifting seasons. Every creature here is not merely surviving within nature, but actively participating in it, shaping and being shaped in return. Sea otters move quietly through coastal waters, yet their role carries immense weight. By feeding on sea urchins, they prevent the unchecked grazing that would otherwise destroy entire kelp forests. In doing so, they help preserve underwater ecosystems that buffer coastlines from storms and erosion. Their survival is tied to the health of the kelp, and the kelp, in turn, depends on them, a balance held together by constant interaction. Further inland, bears wait for the annual return of salmon. These seasonal runs are more than just a source of food. They are moments of transformation. The energy carried upstream by the fish becomes the strength that allows bears to endure long winters. What seems like abundance is fleeting, and every movement, every catch, is part of a narrow window where preparation determines survival. Above them, eagles circle with patience and precision. Their movements are calculated, refined by instinct and experience. Each dive is a measured risk, each success a reminder that even mastery must constantly be maintained. There is no room for error in a world where energy cannot be wasted. Wolves move differently. They rely not on individual strength, but on cooperation. Their survival is built on communication, coordination, and trust within the pack. Every hunt is a shared effort, every success divided among them. Alone, they are vulnerable. Together, they endure. Foxes take another path entirely. They adapt through flexibility, adjusting their behavior to whatever the environment offers. Opportunistic and alert, they shift between strategies, proving that survival here is not about dominance, but about the ability to change. And along the edges of ice and sea, walruses gather, their lives closely tied to the presence of ice that grows less certain with time. The platforms they depend on for rest and safety are not guaranteed. Their existence is a quiet reminder that even the most established patterns can begin to disappear. Across all of these lives, a single truth emerges again and again. No species operates outside the system. No role remains permanent. The conditions shift, the balance adjusts, and every creature must respond. Survival in this world is never something fixed or assured. It is something shaped by circumstance, by timing, by connection. It is negotiated moment by moment, season by season, in a continuous exchange between life and the forces that surround it.